Rahubat Moisar, greetings family. That's of course our language, Miss Batia. We like to use our own tones. Welcome to another Ask Us Anything, 3 questions submitted by anyone in the world. Okay, so we're going to go straight into the 3 questions.
Hello, my name is Kawana Harper, and I have some questions. So I've been on this Nuwapian journey. I've been following you guys for some time, different leaders, and I have questions. So one of my questions is, I was watching some of the teachings, and I understand that melanated beings, we are connected to non-ether, right? And so I have more of a soul question. How does the soul determine to take a non-ether body or a 6 ether body? When it does take the body, right? I don't know. Like, is it more precedent? Is it more important for the earth experience in the body, or is it more important that the soul has an overall experience? So, because there are some pale face people that I don't know, they act melanated, and then is it really important if the soul has the experience in a non-ether body or a 6 ether body? Like, that confuses me. So a little bit about me. I am a realist, and so I kind of absorb all the religions. I understand all the many different perspectives, and so I would like to think I'm an agreeable being, and so I am very empathetic, and so I don't understand why would the creator, whoever that is or whatever it is, if it's energy, right? Why would energy, or maybe I'm confusing myself too, but let's just say I'm a white person, but I don't want to have that experience like I came from the Flugeroids, like I was grafted. And so how do I look for the non-ether bodies? Do I just go be intimate with somebody that's melanated and then they can raise my chakra? I don't know. It just seemed like massive confusion and chaos. It just seems like, can everybody, right, all of the different beings and the different tribes or the different alien species, can we all just find harmony and balance and just coexist with each other? That part where nobody has to be higher or lower than the other one. We just reach a balance. Is that possible? That's one of my questions. Sorry it took so long to get that out.
Thank you for your question. It's great when we get questions. However, we must stress and emphasize that when you're asking questions, try to be very clear and straightforward with your question. That first question is very convoluted. As you said, it also shows a lot of confusion and chaos, and that comes with probably not reading the scrolls by the master teacher, Pana Babyanun, okay? Because most of the questions within that first question that you're asking are already answered in the scrolls. Many pataraks, such as the 30 spirits, soul, spirit. These are 2 pataraks that you can get hold of that have actually answered that question. But it's important for us to clarify and clear things up. So, in terms of the soul, we have to really learn and understand that the soul is completely separate to the physical body and resides in a different realm. And although these different realms are separate, they're also connected, and only those with a soul will be able to access and tap into that soul realm. All right. So it's not a matter of a soul is like coming down and choosing to be in a 9 ether or 6 ether or melanated body. It's like only those with a soul can actually tap into that soul on the soul realm. And when you say melanated beings, melanin is in everything. And the Negroid, who are the most melanated beings, just happen to be melanin progressive. They produce more melanin because of the interaction or the connection with the sun. And there is different type of melanin, starting with the neuromelanin, which is the melanin in the brain, or the ones that forms first in terms of your brain, and then you obviously have melanin in all your organs and all over your body. The largest organ being your skin, which is a shield or a protection from, like the UV rays, etc. But it also is why you're able to absorb the sunlight, and the sunlight is able to activate and recharge and help you produce more melanin. Now, you said the pale face being, or I presume you're referring to the Adamites, who have melanin, but their melanin is regressive, meaning that the same thing that happens with the 9 ether melanated beings happens, but in reverse. So the sun will actually attack and damage them because they don't have the protection from the sun with the layers of the skin or the epidermis, because with the skin you have different layers. So it will penetrate and go straight into their cells to the point where like you then develop cancers or skin cancer, because the sun is actually burning you up. So you need to be in a cool climate or somewhere where you're protected away from the harmful rays of the sun. The question had so many parts. Okay, so I'm just going to rewind the question because there were many different parts and I want to make sure we address everyone. So I'll play it again from the beginning and I will stop it and address each part. That way it's easier.
Hello, my name is Kawana Harper, and I have some questions. So I've been on this wu-nuwaupu journey. I've been following you guys for some time, different leaders, and I have questions. So one of my questions is, I was watching some of the teachings and I understand that melanated beings, we are connected to non-ether.
Okay. Melanated beings have the capacity to be connected to 9 ether. And all beings are melanated. It's just that people have more melanin than others. Some produce melanin and others don't. So it means there will be no protection from the sun. But all melanated beings are not connected to 9 ether. 9 ether is the highest, and you can be connected to it, but you have to be vibrating and able to tap into that realm. Remember, the realms start with the lowest realm, which is the material or the physical plane, and then you move up in vibrations in terms of the spiritual realm, and then in terms of what you call the soul realm. Then you deal with the mental realm. Then you have the level of ethers going up to 9 ether. So as long as you're activated and able to channel and connect with 9 ether, you can do that. But if you're only able to access to a certain level, i.e. just 6 ether, then you can't access 9 ether. You follow? So it's a very good thing to be able to distinguish between the ethers. the ethers and being a melanated being.
Right.
Right. So let's carry on.
And so I have more of a soul question. How does the soul determine to take a non-ether body or a six-ether body? When it
So again, the soul is separate, meaning that if you have a soul, then you're able to tap into that realm I just mentioned called the soul realm. And you can have a body and have a spirit, but not able to tap into the soul. This is why not everything that is alive has a soul, but everything that is alive does have a spirit. And that spirit means that you're able to be animated and you're able to tap into the lower ethers, but not necessarily to the soul realm. And when you're talking about coming in and how you incarnate, you can only reincarnate through the bloodline that you're connected to by way of DNA. And so you can recycle spirits, and you receive the soul from your father. Of course, your father will have to have a soul in the first place for you to receive it. You get the spirit from your mother, you get the soul from your father, and then you get the other parts of you from the elements. Okay, so that's another thing you have to be clear on,
it does
what a
take
soul
the
is.
body, right? I don't know, like is it more precedent? Is it more important for the earth experience in the body, or is it more important that the soul has an overall experience? So
Right. So both. I mean, you as a physical being, you're connected and attached to the soul if you have one. So the experience that you're having in the physical realm is to help you elevate or prepare yourself to elevate to the higher realms or the higher dimensions. And so if you're here in the physical and you're doing things that are more physical, then you're going to be, for lack of a better word, trapped in the physical. So you have to start to do things that tap into the other realms, such as more spiritual practices to be more in tune with the spiritual realm, or more your mind in terms of the way you think and the ability to utilize your mind, which is a portion or a part of the mental reservoir. So then you will be more mental when you're doing things and using your mind to receive proper outformation from the mental realm. So then you'll be more mental. So again, the experiences you're having should help you to elevate to the higher realms. And the soul experience, the soul is not like, it doesn't have, like the physical body will die or basically has an expiration date. The soul doesn't have that. The soul will return eventually back to the soul realm to be in union with other souls. This is what we're trying to do in terms of becoming one soul, okay? Which we, as you get higher, you become a part of the nine ether, in the sense of what we call all, or all expanding, or par ba'ut.
So, because there are some pale-faced people that I don't know, they act melanated, and then is it really important?
See, that's confusing. Pale people that act melanated. Everyone has melanin. When you say act melanated, that's not very clear. If you're saying that people can act like they have a soul, yes, that can make sense, because to act, this is why you have Hollywood. People act, they learn how to act, or how to imitate, or how to pretend. So somebody can act like they've got emotions and can be very convincing as an actor or an actress, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they actually feel or have those emotions. So, for example, someone can cry on cue when they're being filmed as an actress. You've seen many scenes where someone is crying or, behaving in a way like they're very emotional about a situation. Now, if you're an actor or an actress and you can cry on cue, that means there may be 10 takes that you take to get the right shot or make it perfect. So if you can cry, sometimes it's induced, they might use like onions or something that you may not see, but then cut it to the point where the onions make you cry and then you carry on acting. But my point is, just because somebody's acting doesn't mean that it's real. It's also the ability to be able to mimic.
And then, is it really important if the soul has the experience in the non-ether body or the sixth ether body? Like, that confuses me. So a little bit about me. I am...
Right, so let's go on to that. When you say it's not about just looks, it's really about your composition, your DNA. It's not about the color of the skin either. So you can have, that goes down to the mixtures as well. You can have somebody that looks very light, that is melanated, even though they don't look very dark, and they can have a soul. And you can have somebody that's very dark, very melanated, and they don't have a soul. It's about, really, it's not about the looks, it's about the actions and the intentions of that being. So, but at the same time, we know that sixth ether beings, predominantly the Adamites, they lost their soul. So they did have a soul at one point. And you can find this in Joshua, I think it's Joshua 5, 1 or 2, right? So you can lose your soul, meaning that you're cut off. You're cut off from the soul realm. You're cut off from the soul realm to the point where, even though you're still animated and you do have connection with nature by way of the spirit, you don't have the emotion. That, remember, the emotions is part of your soul. You have two souls. Okay, that's actually another important point. When we're talking about the soul, we have to realize that there are two souls. The one that is spoken about most of all is in the Bible known as the breath, or the rawuk, or the ruach, yeah? That is the breath, which means that in order for you to be alive, you need to breathe. So you take in oxygen and then it gets burnt through your sun within you, known as the solar plexus, and then you give off carbon dioxide. That's known as the breath that keeps you alive, right? Now, there is a solar plex for people that have a soul, and there is a lunar plex for people that don't have a soul. This is why when you're looking at fire, or when we talk about the sun is a fire. When you look at fires, there are different types of fires. You have fires that burn yellow, you have fires that burn blue, you have fires that burn green. So depending on the gas or the composition of the fire, it will burn a particular way. So when we say that you have a soul in terms of the breath, yes, everyone that is breathing has either a solar plexus or a lunar plex. So the six ether beings, they have a lunar plex. This is why when they breathe out, they don't really have that hot heat. It's cold, and that relates to the moon. And those that have the sun, that relates to the sun. So you always have the two sides. Yeah. So I'm saying that 9 ether beings, or beings with a soul, they have a solar plexus, and that's why they're connected to the soul realm. And other beings, they have a lunar plex if they don't have a soul, and they're connected to the lunar plex and to the spirit realm.
I am a realist, and so I kind of absorb all the religions.
Again, that's confusion. Absorbing all the religions, that implies that Wu-Sabat is a religion, or we're on religion. We are not a religion. We teach on every subject that will help people liberate themselves from the sixth ether and being trapped in religion. But we are not a religious organization. We mastered the religions. Why? Because a lot of people are stuck in religions and they don't read the books that they profess to follow. we studied their books to the point where we know their books more than them. And how do we know that? Because when we then confront, or not even confront, that's not the right word, when we interact and spoke to people about what they believe, and we point it out and show them, because we did our homework, we did the study, we point it out in their own Bible, things that they don't see. So, for example, you can walk up to a Christian and a Christian will say, if you say you're God, that you're blaspheming because you're not. You should not claim to be God. Then you turn them to Psalms 82:6 or to John 10:34 or to all the quotes that are in their book that tells you that you are God. And then they, at that point, it's like, what's the argument? And we can do this with many, many parts of their, and it's the same with Islam, of their religion. So yeah, we are not a religion. And to say that you can study all religions so that you can be informed and know what they say and what they teach in their religions, but it's confusing to say that you can't be all and be a part of all of them at the same time, because the reason they have divisions and fight each other is because they disagree on the fundamental aspects of what they subscribe to. But yet, if you're talking about the monotheistic religions, that again doesn't make sense, because they are all saying that their father is Abraham and they come from one root, and they all say they believe in Jesus and God, and but yet they have differences and fight amongst each other and argue over the same things that they all say they believe and subscribe to.
Understand all the many different perspectives, and so I would like to think I'm an agreeable being, and so
just because you study different religions doesn't make you an agreeable being or a disagreeable being. It just means that you study them. And I do take the point. What we do in Wu-Sabat is try to bring everybody together in one. So like you say, that there aren't these differences where everyone thinks they're better than everyone else. But we do that by way of everyone can accept facts and truth. So if we all agree on the facts and the truth, there's no divisions and no need for us to be separated and argue, because the fact is a fact, the truth is truth. Okay, so it's good to study everything.
I am very empathetic, and so I don't understand why would the creator, whoever that is or what.
Again, you see, the creator, whoever that is, whatever that is, that shows confusion again, because of the language and the fact that you're saying the creator, but where's the reference? Are you coming from a Bible, a Quran? What are you calling the creator? Because the reality is that different people they use those words, the creator, but they mentally have a different perspective on what they're calling the creator. So in Wu-Sabat, we would say your creator is your mother and your father, of course, right? But people in religion will say, no, my creator is God, because they will say, even though you say your creator is your mother and father, because your mother's the one that grows you in her womb in darkness until you're ready to come out, and your father supplies or produces the sperm that goes into the woman's ovum. But people will say, if you say it's God, the ones that say it's God, they will say, well, who created your mother and father then? And then we would say their mother and father. Then they would say, who created them? Who was the very first? Who was the beginning? And we say, look, if you really want to use that term, then you can say your mother and father are your gods. You see, because when you go to the biblical or the Quranic interpretation of what they're saying, the creator, you know, the word will be, depending on which language you're coming from, right? When you say create, to create something, you're talking about growing and growing in form. That's why all the religious books start off with a creation, you see, but whoever is doing the creating is already there, so that cannot be the beginning. And we say to you that that's because you already existed, and then as what you would refer to as God or God Allah, they already existed, and they existed just like you exist. And when you start to actually see what they're doing things just like how we do. This is why they say that, you know, you were created in their image and their likeness. They walk, they talk, they make mistakes, they fight, they argue. They do all the things that you see people doing on the planet. So We have to be very clear on who you're calling the creator. And that will go all the way back to your ancestors, right? But ultimately, when you go beyond what you're calling people, places, and things, you're going to start to go to elements that exist outside of what you know. And this is why you go into the scientific aspect of things, and you will go to like, what are the first elements and first things to come about to create physical things. So we will go to the ether, from the ether coming into the physical world that is quantified, you know, where we say hydrogen, helium, etc., etc., and these gases. And depending on how far back you're going to the birth of the universe took millions and millions of years to form before you even had life forms, to the point where you're talking about, you know, single cells, amoebas. And so again, people's mind set in terms of what they're calling the creator, you have to be very clear on what that is.
Whatever it is, you know, if it's energy, right? Why would energy, or maybe I'm confusing myself too, but let's just say I'm a white person, but I don't want to have that experience like I came from the Flugeroids, like I was grafted.
You see, again, like you're saying energy, and then energy don't want to come from the flugerod. It doesn't work that way. When we're talking about energy, is what I was just saying, when you go to the birth of the universe. But there are other universes prior to our universe, and then the different types of life forms that existed way before you even get to what you're calling the humanoid. And then when you're saying flugerods, you have to realize that there were beings that existed, and a particular being grafted what you're calling the flugerods. As we've explained already in the previous video, you know, Yakub created the flugerods by way of experiments. But there were many, many, many beings before we even get to Yakub. So it's important to know that it's not like your energy and you just choose to come. There's a process and a chain reaction of how things come from, you know, existence into creation, into evolution, into the different kind of species, to like get to what you're calling the root races on the planet, to get to the experiments between beings taking that which was already here, different species of beings, to create hybrids and all types of different mixtures with the sub-races, etc. So again, I think you should read something like Extraterrestrial and Creation, Designer, the Designer Genes. These are actual facts and scrolls that you can look at that will explain exactly, you know, what energy is, how the flugerods came about. All right, but let's keep going to kind of finish off your question.
Grafted, you know? And so how do I look for the non-ether body? Do I just go be intimate with somebody that's melanated and then it can raise my chakra? I don't know. It just seemed like massive.
Again, now you're talking about cohabiting and sexual intercourse. That's separate from, you know, beings that are on that vibration. They don't partake in, they don't have sexual organs like how you think. So for example, you're talking about a being that has elevated to the point of being, say, a Riskian, that the way they exist is completely different to the way you may perceive it. So they will just use their mind. They can, for example, if they want to move and go somewhere, they will just think. They think it, and then they're there. You know, they can move, you know, distances without having to physically move. All right. But yeah, to the mixtures in terms of physical people, if a being has a soul and they mix with someone that doesn't have a soul, then they can gain that in terms of that energy to give them access to tap into that realm, right? But it's only going to be available until they lose it, you see. So that's why we say, like, for example, if a Nagaru male mixes with a Caucasoid or an Adamite female, she gains from the Nagaru male. She will gain a portion or a part of his energy to that soul, you see. So, and it's the same when they, they have offspring. This offspring will gain that. So it's not as it's a little bit more complex than it may appear.
Massive confusion and chaos. It just seems like, can everybody, right, all of the different beings and the different tribes or the different alien species, can we all just find harmony and balance and just coexist with each other? That part where nobody has to be higher or lower than the other one. We just reach a balance. Is that possible?
Again, that's what we're saying. It's not as simple as that. We can, but the thing is, the confusion comes by beings who, by deception, like for example, if you're, okay, let me answer it simply. You had two sides, right? This is why in this realm a lot of things are based on duality, or you being in the middle of two sides. And originally you had one side, which, let's for argument's sake call it disagreeable, and you had one side called agreeable. But prior to the division, this is what I'm saying, when you go into the higher realms, there isn't that division because you merge to become one. So at the very top, you're one. This is what we talk about when we say pa'ut, or the all expanded. When you've reached that level where you're no longer an individual and you've shed the me, myself, and I, and because you're no longer on the lower vibrations, you don't deal with the divisions because you're a union as one. Now, as you come down, you split into two, where you have positive, where we say agreeable, and you have negative, which we say disagreeable. Because on that realm, you need two things to have a balance, right? And then from that, as you come into the lower levels, you end up with people on the planet who are agreeable and disagreeable. And initially, they will be quarantined into different parts. So you would have one side, let's say the agreeable was known as nupu, and then the other side, zupu, which was disagreeable. Now, they weren't supposed to mix. So even in the religious books, they tell you we are made into tribes to know of each other, and we can interact with each other, but not to mix. Because once you mix, it brings confusion. Because you have people that, let's say, are 9 ether, and you have people that are 6 ether. Or let's make it simple. You have people who say, do disagreeable things that are not conducive for a being that doesn't want to do those disagreeable things, right? So when you look at on the planet, you have races that cause chaos, division, fights, wars, etc. You have others that don't do that. Initially, they were kept separately, but then with the intervention of disagreeable beings from other star systems, because again, we're not just talking about on the planet, they eventually arrived here on the planet and mixed and took, like as they tell you in terms of rapes and so on, to produce offspring. This is what the Bible is saying when it's saying that it grieved God in his heart of his creation, because that creation was nothing but evil or disagreeable continuously. So to answer your question again, there is harmony and peace if all the things, whether you're dealing with elements, they maintain and stay in their environment. It's like fire can be okay amongst fire if that's what it is. But if you take fire and bring it to an environment that it can consume the things in that environment, then that becomes chaos to that environment. So if you have an environment where there's paper, and you can look at this through all the gases, right? Now, with people, what happened is that disagreeable mixed with agreeable and agreeable mixed with disagreeable, it creates confusion, and created confusion to the point where the elders or the beings that are higher, they're looking down at the chaos and the problems and trying to now separate everything back to how it was supposed to be by removing the disagreeable forces, 6 ether forces, that are causing the chaos on the planet. All right. So initially, they were quarantined to the different zones. Zupu being the disagreeable zone, and Nupu. You can read all of this in the actual fact called Existence, How and Why, and others as well.
Is that possible? That's one of my questions. Sorry it took so long to get that out.
So it is possible for harmony if everyone and everything stays in their rightful place, and that creates balance, and you can interact and get along, but you don't mix because of the elders knowing what the production of mixing is going to do. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. It's like there are certain things that come about, such as being bipolar, for example, where if you have a balance, but you go and mix that, and then you have someone swinging from two extremes to the other, and sometimes it can causes that imbalance all the time because you're mixed of both worlds. So then you want to relate to that world sometimes, and then you might swing over to the other side and relate to the other world. You see, so
that's one of my questions.
Yeah, I hope that's answered the question. Right, let's move to the second question.
My second question is, does pain and trauma cause the soul to fragment? And if it does, is the journey then to bring the fragmented soul back to wholeness? So like, if I've experienced sexual abuse or physical abuse or psychological abuse, it's my job then to find wholeness within my soul. And then my last question is...
All right, let's address that one. Again, it's thinking about things in the different realms. So pain and trauma is things that you experience in these lower realms and lower vibrations. This is why your memory, in terms of your cells and your being, the physical you, is the one that will go through the torment and the pain and all of that kind of experience to the point where it can hinder you moving on to the higher realms, and you're then trapped and you have to relive and or given chances to fix those issues that are holding you back from elevating and leaving all of that behind. This is how in religion, the way they explain that is that when you go to heaven, which is a higher realm or above, that you won't feel no more pain, no suffering, but then they give you a description of heaven as being a place where they still try to describe it in a physical way. And that doesn't make sense, because when you start to ask people things like, what do you do when you're in heaven? What does heaven look like? Or, like if you died at a young age and you're never going to suffer ever again and not age and all these kind of things. So are you going to remain the same age that you crossed over at? It wouldn't make sense, because that means if babies crossed over, they're going to remain babies, and children will remain children, adults will remain adults, and the elder with all the ailments and, all the pain and suffering that they may have from having, arthritis or, whatever diseases that they had, would they remain like that? Or you're just saying that all of that's just removed? It gets confusing when you look at it from the way religions try to explain it. But in Wu-Sabat, what you're doing is you're here to experience the things that you haven't burnt out in terms of your desires on the lower vibrations, because you can't take those with you to the higher vibrations. You see, so because that would mean that you would bring that pain and that trauma and that way of thinking to the higher realms. So you have to experience it here, burn it out, and then you move on. And when you're moving on, you're shedding and letting go of these things so that you're not taking it with you. So a lot of the times you come back because you haven't elevated or shed those desires, or you have to come back and experience the trauma that you caused somebody else, or that the person that caused it to you, they have to come back and experience and go through having to burn that out to learn and then move on to the higher realms. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, it's the soul is not the one that is experiencing the trauma.
How do you break a pattern? So like I can see the same things happening over and over again. It's the same stuff. It's like, if you get up every day, you go to work, you come home, you cook, it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with, you may choose the same partner. It's the same partner, but you can't create harmony within the relationship itself. How do you break that pattern? Those are my questions. Again, my name is Kawana Harper. I'm from the whole planet because I don't believe that I'm in Virginia right now, Williamsburg, Pocahontas land. Woohoo! But I'm not from here. Like, I just feel connected to a higher source, which I am anyway. So yes, that's me. Yay. Thank you.
Okay, again, breaking cycles is to change your mind. If you do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, that's one of the definitions for what they call madness, right? And Wu-Sabat helps you to do that, because you hear it from a lot of people that leave religions and come into Wu-Sabat. They're like, religion is repetitive because nothing changes, because you're doing things and trying to live a life of people that lived thousands of years ago that doesn't work in today's environment. So all the people in the Bible are dead. All the stories are old stories. And you go to church, you read the same verses over and over and over again and talk about the same things over and over again. And you do the same when you go to the mosque on Friday. You go over the Quran. You're just repeating yourself and expecting change. Whereas in Wu-Sabat, when you come into Wu-Sabat, you learn, you start to study and research and realize that you've been misinformed, or there's a lot of distortion in what you've been taught. So when you learn, you change. Like, for example, if you've been taught to eat a wrong diet, that's not good for you. When you stop by changing your mind, you can then implement the positive diet that's going to give you the health benefits, and you're going to start to do different to what you did previously. You can apply that with anything, like you're calling on names and trying to pray to some being or someone that you don't know who that is. And in Wu-Sabat, we go down to the detail and we tell you that name, that's referring to this being, like Enki, Enlil, or whoever it was, and take the mask off of these beings. So then you will know, okay, you need to tap back into your ancestors and to the beings that you're connected with, that will listen and help you and guide you from the other side, like your ancestors, yeah? So when you say, how do you change your mind, even boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever, in Wu-Sabat, we don't have that, in the sense of, if you're new or a young person, we encourage you not to have multiple relationships and fluids exchanges from different people, which causes you to act and behave and think in a particular way that is not going to be as positive for you. So if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, going to the same places, to find, mates or partners or whatever, then you probably got to break that chain and go somewhere else. You don't go to a club, to find someone like you would find if you went to, I don't know, like a conscious event. And, people that you have to go to where the energy is going to attract, your energy is going to attract the type of energy that you would like. There was a last part of your question that I've got to rewind a little bit. But yeah, so you change your mind.
My name is
You
Kawana
change your
Harper.
mind by
How do you break that pattern? Those are my questions.
Okay,
Again, my name
that's
is
the point. You break the pattern by reading the book called The Mind, because what's happening when you're doing the same thing over and over again, you create grooves in your mind. And these grooves are the pathways of how you think, and the repetitiveness of you doing the same thing over and over again means that these grooves become habits. So you have to change your habits. You have to change the things you're doing that are not yielding you the right results. So it's as simple as studying, learning, and having the correct information so that you can think and make correct decisions. We've got a part of that called the decision, that it will help you with learning how to think correctly and make the right decisions. All right, we hope that's helped you. And yeah, until next time, remember, if you have questions you would like us to answer for you, you can send them to us. Upload yourself asking the questions to osmvision.wetransfer.com and we'll get those answered for you. All right, tawat.